a book that I have just fallen in love with teaching to my seniors is Pride and Prejudice. And there were years where I feel obligated to teach a great 19th century novel.
Yeah.
There are ones I also love, but they're just huge. And in a survey class, it's hard to manage that. Oh my gosh, Pride and Prejudice has been such a delight.
Jay, that's
So,
never going to work. You teach all 17, 18-year-old males from
right,
21st century Massachusetts. I recommend against it. They'll
right.
never, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just so excited to reread it every year.
Mm.
And anyway, one of the things I journaled about a lot this year was the book's stance on reading itself. It's a book, all of her main protagonists throughout all of her novels are readers, which I think is interesting, the women.
Mm. Yeah.
So I actually just want to read a couple little nuggets. There's four very distinct ways Pride and Prejudice suggests we can be readers. And I'm going to connect this to Zadie Smith. So Mary Bennet, who is the bookish, nerdy sister of the protagonist, Elizabeth Bennet, she reads like Fordyce's sermons and nonfiction. She just sort of extracts superficial morals from what she reads.
Yeah.
So this is her style of reading, is reading as confirmation bias. So I read things I already agree with.
Right.
Or reading as just ethics training, you know. So she says in chapter 5, pride is a very common failing, I believe, but all that I have ever read, I am convinced that it is very common indeed, that human nature is particularly prone to it, and that there are very few of us who do not cherish a feeling of self-complacency on the score of some quality or other, real or imaginary. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. A person may be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, and vanity to what we would have others think of us. All that's well and good, Paul, but this is a girl who basically never leaves her house.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so like you wouldn't necessarily listen to Mary Bennet tell you how to live your life. So this is someone who lives to extract moral lessons from books. Caroline Bingley, who's the rich girl who loves Darcy,
Yeah.
has already watched Darcy kind of fall in love with a girl who likes books. So Caroline Bingley says in Caroline Bingley doesn't read a page throughout the whole book, but she says in chapter 11, I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tires of anything than of a book. And then here's the line. When I have my own house, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library. And this is like the guy I was at across from me at Barnes and Noble a few weeks ago, who had Moby Dick on his table, but he was reading like stupid magazines, like People magazine. So the first one was reading as a sort of superficial ethics training. Yeah. Caroline Bingley is reading as performance art. I want to read to look like I'm a certain kind of person. Mr. Bennet, the sister's father, is just reading as escape, and he just needs peace and quiet. He's a dad, right? And the novel says in his library he had always been sure of leisure and tranquility, and though prepared to meet with folly and conceit in every other room in the house, he was used to be free of them there. So we have reading as ethics training in a superficial way, reading as performance art, reading as escape. But the real substantive reading, the Zadie Smith kind of reading, I would argue, is Elizabeth Bennet, chapter 35. Darcy writes her a letter, and it's a long 4, 5, 6-page letter. In chapter 36, the following chapter, Jane Austen gives an entire chapter to Elizabeth thinking. And it's a revolutionary, incredible chapter. So this is reading as humble transformation. This is the kind of reading that I think Zadie Smith endorses. I am open to whatever this does to me, right? And she says this really great couple of sentences. She says to herself, I, who have prided myself on my discernment, I have courted prepossession and ignorance and driven reason away where either were concerned. And here's the big line of humility. Till this moment, I never knew myself. And I would argue Zadie Smith is telling us when we read great literature openly and humbly, we're invariably going to be constantly augmenting who we are and constantly realizing, oh my gosh, I didn't know about that. I didn't know that. So to me, the choice as an English teacher and as a reader myself is I can choose to be frustrated with that, or look at it as an adventure.
Yeah.
And I think the latter is a lot more interesting.